and welcome to my behaviorist biography presentation. My behaviorist is very much still alive and practicing pretty close to the main campus of George Mason in Baltimore, Maryland. My behaviorist focuses mainly on pediatric feeding disorders and severe problem behaviors. My behaviorist primarily serves children with feeding difficulties, intellectual disabilities, and autism spectrum disorder. Do we have any guesses on who my behaviorist is? I'm pleased to introduce you to Dr. Carrie S.W. Borrero. Dr. Borrero earned her doctorate degree from the University of Florida in 2006 before she began her work in Baltimore in 2007. For the record, she's not letting any grass grow under her feet since getting to Baltimore. Dr. Borrero is a senior behavior analyst in the Pediatric Feeding Disorder Program at the Kennedy Krieger Institute. She's also the co-director of the Maryland Association for Behavior Analysis. And she's an assistant professor of psychiatry and behavior sciences at the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. Like the slide says, she's a pretty big deal. So her work at a glance. Her general work is that she's contributed to behavior analysis through her published work and her studies in relation to the treatment and analysis of pediatric feeding disorders, as well as severe problem behaviors and the parent interactions in the treatment of these behaviors and disorders. For my research, I reviewed 5 of her articles. The first one is a descriptive and experimental analysis of potential precursors to problem behavior, published in the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis. The second is a comparison of descriptive and functional analysis of inappropriate mealtime behavior, published in Behavior Analysis Practice. The third is a descriptive analysis of pediatric food refusal and acceptance, published in the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis. The fourth is a method for evaluating parameters of reinforcement during parent-child interactions, published in Research and Developmental Disabilities. And the fifth is using backward chaining and physical guidance to teach self-feeding, published in Behavior Interventions. 3 of the articles that I reviewed focused on feeding difficulties in children with intellectual disabilities. 1 of the articles focused on the parameters of reinforcement during parent and child interactions, and 1 focused on the potential precursors to problem behavior. So throughout all of her studies and all of the findings that she has, it brings us to the big question, what did she find in all of these studies? In her study, she focuses primarily on the functional and descriptive analysis of the behaviors of the participants. She also incorporates the participants' caregivers and parents in many of the studies so that the behaviors can be observed in the most natural setting as possible. She gives the parents and caregivers the instructions for them to behave as they normally would, so that there's more of an objective viewing of what's going on. Many of the findings that she talks about in her study discussions detail how the studies may be used in program creation and parent trainings to better help her clients. Her studies also review how reinforcement and the schedule of reinforcement play a vital role in the effectiveness of changing behaviors. So due to this project, I've been fortunate enough to be granted a face-to-face interview with Dr. Carrie S.W. Borrero. Well, not really, but it'd be pretty cool if I could actually get her to answer my questions as a new behaviorist. So if I was able to sit down with her, what would I actually ask in our interview? My first question would be, given your extensive work with children with intellectual disabilities, if you had to choose one factor or function that contributes to the prevalence of problem behavior, what would it be and why? My next question is, what is your most rewarding accomplishment in your career thus far? My third, in many of your studies, you add in the discussion areas that the study led you to believe there was room for more research. Have you or do you intend to follow up with that research? If so, for which studies and why? My fourth question would be, when you first meet a new client, what are your first steps with the client and the parent or caregiver prior to starting treatment? And my fifth question would be, is there anything from your career or studies that went in the total opposite manner than expected, or where you felt you made a mistake in application? If so, what and how would you approach the same circumstances in a different way to not make that mistake again? So how do I feel that she's influenced our field of behavior analysis? I feel that she's a champion for behavior analysis for many different reasons. First, feeding difficulties and severe behaviors not only have behavioral consequences, but physical health consequences. Her work has helped to open pathways to treatment and parent training to improve the lives of many children with various disabilities. I also think that in her work, she supports the previous works of other behavior analysts, supporting and furthering their work to form an applied approach to programs. I feel that her work can best be summed up through her quote where she says, evaluating parameters of reinforcement may be useful when designing a treatment by identifying specific dimensions of reinforcement influencing response allocation. This type of information may be useful in training situations with parents and caregivers. Thanks so much for watching my presentation. I hope you have a good day.